We hear a lot of talk about sustainability in the animal food industry, but what does it really look like, and how can one go about achieving true sustainability? To address just that, the Institute for Feed Education and Research, also known as iFeeder, partnered with the American Feed Industry Association and its members to develop a sustainability roadmap and the Animal Food Industry Sustainability Toolkit. Both were developed in collaboration with an industry advisory committee and the Context Network. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead, and with us today are Laura Moody, Executive Director of iFeeder, and Matt Sutton-Vermillion with the Context Network. Welcome to you both. Great to have you with us.
Hey, thanks, Sarah, for having us on.
Before we begin, I want to encourage those of you that are tuning in to post any questions that you might have there in the chat window on the right-hand side of your screen or in your social media feed. We'll be sure to get those to our speakers. Now, I believe we have a few slides here to start to help us frame up this the sustainability roadmap and the more recent development of the Animal Food Industry Sustainability Toolkit. So if we could have those slides, Laura, over to you.
Hey, great. Thanks so much, Sarah. So just as an introduction to iFeeder. So iFeeder has a mission of advancing understanding and trust for a sustainable animal feed and pet food supply chain through education and research. So the efforts that we have undertaken in the last year were really aimed at creating a better understanding of sustainability in the animal food sector relative to how we engage with all of our upstream and downstream stakeholders, as well as creating resources and providing some educational opportunities for the animal food sector in the sustainability space. So we know from AFIA, the American Feed Industry Survey that was done last year, that sustainability is really important to the animal food sector. So when we ask about the importance of sustainability to their organizations, AFIA members responded with a positive of 80 to 90% said that sustainability was either important or very important to their organization. So we do feel strongly that the work that we're pursuing is a necessity and an opportunity for the animal food industry. When we look at animal food and in particular feed that's used for livestock and poultry production, there's been a lot of advancement in our understanding of the role that feed has in the environmental footprint for our protein partners. And so it's been estimated that feed can be 40 to 60% of the footprint for our protein partners here within the United States. So it's really important for us to be able to tackle and work on some of the challenges that we have in the feed space. In the last year, we partnered with the Context Network to explore the landscape of sustainability across the full feed value chain. And we also worked in partnership for the Feed System Sustainability Summit with World Wildlife Fund. In both of those efforts, one of the things that we did was host a series of webinars, and we learned or heard from several of our protein peers. And so I just want to provide some insight or some background for why this is such an important area. So one of the folks we heard from was Iowa Select Farms. They're a large pork producer in the Midwest, and they recognize that they have opportunities to be able to demonstrate improvements in their footprint to be able to provide that information to their customers and their customers' customers. In doing that, they undertook a life cycle assessment, and they did that using what we would say is secondary data. So data that was book values, if you will, data that was gathered from a variety of survey information. And they realized that they could improve the environmental footprint of their pork production operations just by having better data around feed. So their estimate is that they could improve their LCA or improve their environmental footprint by 40% if they just had better data relevant to feed. MPS Egg Farms is another entity that we heard from, and they are interested in producing a lower carbon egg and actually being able to verify and sell a lower carbon egg. So they partnered with FBN, and FBN helped them source low carbon grain, or grain that was produced with what we would say is regenerative agricultural practices or practices to improve soil health. They then were able to track that grain's movement through their feed mill and into their laying operations so that they could verify and certify that they had produced a low carbon egg with lower carbon feed. We also heard from McDonald's. McDonald's is very interested in being able to show that the animals that they're using or processing are produced with feed that has a couple of elements. So one of those is that feed is not being produced from land that has recently been converted from native prairie. So they want to see feed that's sourced from land that hasn't newly been converted. They also are interested in being able to source, similar to MPS eggs, feedstuffs that are being produced with regenerative ag practices. And they're also interested in being able to look at enteric emission reductions on not only feedlot animals or animals that are in confinement, but also animals in grazing operations. And so that's a really an opportunity for the industry, is how do we get those feed additives or feed innovations into grazing animals. And so that's just a sampling of the types of downstream partners or customers that we have that are interested in what feed can bring to the sustainability space. Matt, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about some of the trends that we have relative to the animal food industry and the sustainability space.
Thank you, Laura. When we worked with you and your advisors that are all part of food supply chains, one of the important things that you said was we want to understand what's behind this. And so we continued our research that we've done for many years in this area of sustainability and how you measure, report, and verify progress on impacts that are important to your organizations and your customers and the communities that you operate in. And when we did that, we found that the drivers continue to be shareholder expectations and the expectations of those that are involved within the company. So shareholder expectations are set by the investors and the investment community. And there's ongoing efforts to continue to advance the way that those things are measured. And so that it's a risk mitigation discussion, the reducing the likelihood of an organization's brand showing up associated with challenges in their supply chain. And so what they really want to do is demonstrate responsibility. We looked upstream and downstream, and so that we looked at the supply chains, the full supply chains, with your team to understand where those pressures are driving, what's driving those pressures, and what's they're looking for outcomes. And those outcomes that they're looking for are responsibility and transparency, and understanding that you are looking at your supply chains, you are looking at your systems and able to measure, report, and verify progress on these things. So we took a look at those insights and shared them with your advisors and your organization. And that is part of that toolkit that is in the animal food industry sustainability toolkit. Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, so Matt, you mentioned advisors for the effort that we had. And so, iFeeder is a nonprofit organization, so we have to raise dollars to be able to pursue the work that we do to support the industry. And our animal food industry sustainability toolkit was supported by the 23 organizations you see on the screen. I put this up here not only to recognize them, but also to acknowledge that when we were understanding or seeking to better understand what the animal food industry needed in the sustainability space, we leaned on all of these representatives as an advisory committee. And very importantly, yes, you see some organizations on there that are publicly traded, multinational companies that have sustainability teams in place that are supporting their own organization's efforts. But then you see a lot of organizations on there that are not, right? Some of them are very small, one location facilities that recognize the need to engage in the sustainability space, and they bring a different perspective to the needs. So it was really across the feed sector that we were gathering input as we moved forward in this space. So you've also heard Matt and I use the term either the full feed value chain, or we've said something about upstream and downstream customers. So when you look at the solid red line, and in particular the areas that are in that light green, that's who we're considering the animal food sector for this discussion. Downstream of us would be live animal production, food processing, and consumer-facing companies. Upstream of us would be commodity production or feedstuff producers, as well as crop inputs. The whole landscape, the whole value chain is really important to the discussion because the downstream and upstream stakeholders from the feed industry influence what we do. We have to react to them and they have to react to us. But when we're talking about the toolkit that we're discussing today, we really built that out just for the area that you see highlighted in that solid red line, and that is for the feed industry. So I want to just introduce briefly the Animal Food Industry Sustainability Toolkit that iFeeder launched. And you can find this on iFeeder's website at ifeeder.org. It's available for download. We developed the toolkit with insights from animal food industry members and other stakeholders. The toolkit itself contains about 25 resources that are indexed back to the 3 areas that you see highlighted on this screen. So crawl, getting started, walk, beginning to make progress, and run, starting to be able to report progress and better engage your customers. Those 3 elements, we recognize that some may work on those in a stepwise function. Some may be in a different place in their journey, so they're going straight to the run section. And really also, some of them are somewhat cyclical, and you might repeat or go back to those elements as you work through the journey that is sustainability. So within the sustainability toolkit, we have a variety of materials in there. I think one of the great places for folks that are really new to the space, there's a lovely 4.5-page glossary of terms. So sometimes when you hear people talking about sustainability, we can start talking about acronyms really quick. We can talk about SASB and GRI and CDP and Scope 1 and Scope 2 and net zero and carbon neutral and what do all those mean? And so, you know, there's some really basic materials in there, like a glossary of terms that helps understand that and describe that. There's also, as you move through it, you know, insights into beginning a materiality assessment for your organization, maybe investigating and considering doing a life cycle assessment on one of your ingredients or products, all the way to better understanding what our downstream customers' expectations are from the animal feed industry to some message maps. And so there's a variety of resources there. They're indexed to those 9 areas, and I hope everybody will take some time to download that and explore what's available. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Matt, and let you take a deeper dive into one of the resources that's available in that toolkit.
Thanks, Laura. When we interviewed and surveyed your advisors as well as your comments regarding the upstream and downstream members of the food animal industry supply chain, they told us they need something that's practical and that meets them where they are coming from. As you mentioned, many of the organizations are just starting their sustainability journey. They told us they need something that's practical and that helps them understand best practices so they don't have to learn lessons that have already been taught to others within their supply chain. And so we start by looking at this and saying, the journey has to begin with what your end in mind is and where you're going. So the strategy, why are we doing this in the center of that piece of the puzzle over to the right-hand side of the screen? So we start there and give a simple set of expectations that you can reach, that can align with your organization and where you are. Then you move into how does this anchor with the vision, mission, and values of the organization? And how does that meet people so that when, the employees get up in the morning, get out of bed, put their boots on and go to work, what the expectations are. Sustainability works when it's part of operations and when it's part of the company culture. It doesn't work at all if it's just a bolt-on that is an added expectation that doesn't connect with how people are being evaluated for their performance and how their customers are setting expectations for them. So it needs to be in sync with those aspects. And then you can have a healthy discussion with your suppliers, because as you noted on the other slide, we're all in this together. And by connecting and sharing information in an appropriate manner that helps create value within supply chains, we have healthy discussions that can move forward. So by doing that, that sets you on the journey that can be sustainable in itself. Thanks, Laura.
Get one more slide there.
Absolutely. When we look at those best practices, of course, we start talking about leadership, ownership, and buy-in, and how they show up and how they set expectations, how they embed this in the culture. Many organizations don't even use sustainability or the S word when they're talking about this. They talk about their core values and why these things are important to them and how they show up as leaders within the organization and the expectations that they have for those that report up to them. Then we align the sustainability objectives with that company culture and how people get things done and how they set expectations and maintain and manage those expectations internally. And then we set those clear, concise expectations and an action plan to fill gaps on where we're coming from to where we're going to. And it enables us to do this in a healthy manner that is sustainable. Those simple questions that need to be addressed within that action plan. Why are we doing this? What does success look like? And who owns the sustainability strategy and plan? When every employee owns a piece of it and is proud of the results that they're delivering and how they are showing up, it enables them to have a pride and ownership of it, and the journey is successful, and you can move through challenges that are likely to occur and that always do occur in food animal supply chains, because we're dealing with biology, we're dealing with the ecology, we're dealing with weather, we're dealing with people and all these variables that are many times out of our control. And so when we start in that way, it enables us to finish strong. Back to you, Laura.
Thanks, Matt. And just one more time for folks, if you're interested in exploring the toolkit, if you are an American Feed Industry Association member, the toolkit is available for free. If you're not an AFIA member, you can explore becoming a member, or you can download the toolkit from the AFIA publications page. And so to start that, if you go to ifeeder.org, you can you can track your way to the toolkit and to download the toolkit.